The crossing of the Jordan. Ultimately, what it's all about is going out, not sitting back in your comfort. And so, the idea, it's like getting your minds out of the stuck mode of just sitting back, enjoying my car. Things are good as they are. I don't want to take a risk. Joshua chapter 3 challenges us to go out and to be effective with the gospel for God's kingdom. So let's read our first verse here. In verse 1, he says, "Early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from Shittim and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over." Okay, it's in the Bible. They were at Shittim. That's where they're stuck, all right? And they're going over to the promised land. They're finally going to cross over now and step into something new, something scary. Let's see our setting right here. We can look at the map. So you'll notice that this whole the line that you're seeing, the various colors that are there, this is tracking the path of the Israelites as they step into the promised land, as they go out to conquer. And so in chapter 3, we're finding ourselves right there at Shittim, and they're about to cross the Jordan River. That's where the yellow line is crossing the river. After they cross right there at the Jordan, everything is going to change. Before this, they had been used to just wandering in the desert, sort of aimlessly, trapped out there. They were used to it. They had been there for years and years. On top of that, they had God providing for them. He would provide for them manna from heaven. So every day they didn't have to worry about, scavenging for food. God would literally provide it for them. So they were used to it. God was providing for them. There was nobody around, as far as enemies are concerned. They were kind of just left to themselves. So there's certainly a safety or security involved with that. But now they're going to cross this river and face a threat that they've never had before. They're going to face battle-hardened troops. They're going to face cities that are fortified by giant walls. They're going to face threats like they've never seen before. This is truly uncharted territory. Beyond that, after crossing the river, there is no retreat. There is no escape. It also tells us in the passage that this is during flood season, so this river would be very high, and there's many thousands of people here. And so it's like, once they cross, they're stuck. They can't run back to the safety that they once knew. They are there. This is a real commitment. What it is, too, is a real step of faith. The crossing of the Jordan, ultimately what we're going to see tonight, what this is about, is first knowing who it is that you serve. The reality is they could not step out without understanding first that it was God leading them. God was going before them. They had to recognize that God is sovereign. And all that simply means is that God is king. He's in charge, right? And so there's nothing beyond him. There's nothing that could, fool him or overcome him. He is the king. He's sovereign, and their sovereign Lord is going before them. So they had to recognize that in order to take this step to move into the promised land in the scary situation, okay? This is equally true for us. We have to recognize that we need God, that he's our king too. We need him no less now than they did back then. Why? Because we too are moving out into uncharted territory. We're called to move out. I think naturally we as humans, we like safety. We like our comfort. We like to sit back and, just be left to ourselves. The coronavirus is, for example, I think causing a lot of mixed emotions, mixed feelings in people. Because on the one hand, it's kind of scary to get coronavirus, and who knows what could happen there? Who knows, people that I love, they could get it, and the economy, all this turmoil. But on the other hand, it's causing people to nest in their places of comfort. And it's kind of like, at least for the young folk, they kind of like that idea. The young generation are doing this anyway. Sociological stats are telling us that people are self-isolating even before the coronavirus happens. Whether it's due to technology or whatever, people are less connected than ever. They just like their comfort. They like their creature comforts. They like to be left, alone to their own devices, and stepping out, engaging relationally can be really scary. It's becoming a more and more scary thing for the young people. But I think most of us could relate to that attitude of, I just like to be left to my own devices, my own creature comforts. But for us, we're called, just like the Israelites here, to give up our comfort for the sake of God's kingdom. We're called to go out too. And to love and to serve, to bring the gospel out. Why? Because we are called to join a spiritual fight. All right? And so when I'm talking about a fight, when I'm talking about spiritual warfare, this is not the kind of warfare that you might be used to thinking of. This isn't the kind of warfare you're going out and conquering with swords. Throughout history, people have misunderstood that to think, yeah, you know what? Conquering for God's kingdom means literally putting people to death that, disagree with me. That's never been part of God's plan for Christians. For us, what the spiritual fight is one of truth versus lies, one of love versus hate. Ephesians chapter 6, verses 12 says, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." It's good versus evil as well. There is a spiritual dimension to this life. There are many that would deny it, but I think deep down we sense that. We sense that there's more to us than just the physical matter that make us up, that there is something spiritual about us. The spiritual realm is real, whether we can actively see it with our own two eyes or not. It is a reality. We can no more deny that than we could deny that COVID's a thing, There are people that have tried doing that. COVID's just a hoax. It's not really happening. It's the government trying to control you or something, but as time has gone on, it's become increasingly more and more obvious. No, coronavirus, it's real. It's a real threat. We got to do something about it. The reality is the spiritual war, the spiritual battle is also real, and it has real casualties. The spiritual battle is all about rescuing people from, what it says there in the verse, the authorities, the powers of this dark world. We're rescuing people out of that, out of what the Bible calls Satan's kingdom. What Satan does, at his part, is to blind people from coming into a relationship with God. He doesn't want people thinking about God. He doesn't want people getting to know God. He wants to keep people far from him, and he puts all of his efforts, all of his strength behind doing that very thing. And so our part in the Bible, God calls us to, is to step out, reach people for Christ, bring Christ to them. We're called to step out boldly, share Christ, and love people, no matter what kind of opposition we'll face. And so that's also something to expect. In a battle, you expect to face opposition. In a spiritual battle, same thing. You face opposition. You face hate. You face people saying you shouldn't be sharing your faith. You shouldn't be doing what you're doing as Christians. How dare you? That's dogmatic of you to tell someone that their beliefs are wrong and that, Christ is the only way. You face that kind of thing. Throughout history, people have found ways to persecute, hold back Christians, and blame Christians for things. I mean, you see, and it's still happening today. Ran across this New York Times op-ed, which was titled originally, they did edit the title after this due to backlash, but was "The Road to Coronavirus Hell was Paved by Evangelicals." The coronavirus is because of you, Christians. It's all your fault. I guess, the reasoning behind that was that Christians are always anti-science, but we need science now more than ever. And if we had more science, then we would have been able to beat this virus up by now easily. I mean, it's quite a stretch when you're looking at that, because no, we love science. Science is great. Science has enabled technology to do what we're doing. Anyway, but people have always found excuses to try to blame Christians, try to halt Christians, stop them from doing the work they're doing, and it's continuing to this present day. We face opposition. This is a spiritual thing that we're facing. I think most Christians probably don't recognize the reality of the spiritual battle that we're in. Many are naive, thinking, the world's good. They cozy up to the world and think, really, ultimately, don't really have any enemies out there. That, it's just I want to live my life now and get help from God as my blessing machine, and just kind of get through this life. But they lose the sight of the truth, which is that we're engaged in a true battle. This is war that we're in. And so Christians that don't recognize the reality of spiritual warfare is they lose. They lose their kids to the world, and we're seeing that happening as young people are leaving the church like never before. They lose their significance. They lose any kind of impact that they have on other people's lives. They don't make very compelling Christians. Why would I listen to you? Why would I follow what you're telling me, when you're not even living it out for yourself? The stakes of this spiritual conflict are high. And we can't afford to sit back and do nothing, okay? God calls us to step out. He calls for a decision. Will you cross over? Will you step out for my kingdom boldly, lovingly, right? Will you do that? Well, that's where we can learn from our friends from back in the past, these Israelites, as they face a similar decision. Are you ready to cross over into something dangerous? And so here they are, and as we continue in verses 2 through 4. It says, after 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people. When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God and the Levitical priests carrying it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. Yeah, God's got a lead here. You got to follow this ark. But keep a distance of about 2,000 cubits, which would be about 3,000 feet, between you and the ark. Do not go near it. So here we have the famous Ark of the Covenant making an appearance. And this would be what it would look like. You have, it's pretty ornate, beautiful. You have angels up on top looking down on what would be called the mercy seat. The point of the Ark of the Covenant was to represent God's presence among his people. It's God going before his people. And so that's something to be taken seriously. Recognize that this is God himself, and so you have it's like keep your distance, 3,000 feet away from it. And the point being that, it's God that's going to be leading. It's not going to be you guys paving your own way and conquering for yourselves. It's going to be God doing this for you. So you got to let God do his thing. Take him out. So what's also interesting here, very cool about the Ark of the Covenant, is that this would also become a beautiful picture for what God would do in the future. What they would do with the Ark of the Covenant is that it would fill a very important role in when they would perform sacrifices. And so they were called, ritualistically, they would sacrifice an animal, and the blood would be poured over the ark and what's called the mercy seat there, symbolically saying that the blood of this animal is a cover to people's sins. And so it's like it was only a symbol back then, though. And it was like, ultimately, why are we sacrificing animals? Why are we pouring blood over this? Well, it would become a picture for what, ultimately God's plan would come to, which is to send his son, Jesus Christ, down to serve as the ultimate sacrifice, right? The animal blood didn't actually cover people's sins, but Jesus' blood did. And so the ark became, it was like, people didn't understand it then. What is God's plan here? What's the point of all of this? And that wouldn't be made clear until 1,000 years later, when Jesus himself would come and serve as that sacrifice, paying for people's sins once and for all. So I just love that, as you read the Old Testament, just paying attention to things like that, just seeing like the signs that, that God is pointing to, his ultimate plan is just an awesome thing. You just have the whole Old Testament written over a period of thousands of years, and yet you still see the signs of God's ultimate unfolding plan, happening throughout. There's never been anything written like it. You can just see God's hand throughout it. Anyway, continuing in verse 5, he says, Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. Consecrate yourselves. That's key. What does it mean to consecrate yourself? Well, it simply means to set yourself apart for God, is to make yourself holy. Holy simply means set apart. This is the secret to God's battle plan. He's like, here's our battle plan, okay? This is where we start. You start by consecrating yourselves. Weird battle plan. You got to admit that, for sure. But what's the significance of that? What it means is admitting that you need me. That's what God is saying. Admit that you need me and that you'll follow me, right? That you can't do this on your own power. Accept me as your king is really the challenge there. And so, what's also interesting to me as I read this is, this is so clearly a mind thing, not a deeds thing. It's not so much a focus on doing the right things. It's like he's trying to get the people to recognize that he is king. Set your mind on him. And the same call is for us. Is Jesus going to be Lord of your life too? Romans 6:13 says, do not offer any part of yourself to sin as an instrument of wickedness, but rather offer yourselves to God as those who have been brought from death to life, and offer every part of yourself to him as an instrument of righteousness. Now, to people who would not consider themselves Christians, who have not received Christ, the first decision to make here is, will you accept Christ? Will you accept his death on the cross, that sacrifice to cover your sins? Will you simply invite him into your life? That's the first and most important decision to be made. But the challenge here that we see in Romans 6 is to go even beyond that. A lot of Christians get stuck, simply at, they become Christians, they accept Jesus, and then they don't do anything with their lives because they've never really presented themselves to God fully to be used by him. There's another decision to be made here where it's like, I present myself to you as an instrument of righteousness to be used by you, God. That's a more scary calling, because that's saying, God, I'm going to put you in controls of my life. Are you really willing to make that decision? So this is a decision not to be taken lightly, to say like, God, I want to be used by, I want to be your instrument here on earth. All right. This is a decision that, you need to really take before the Lord before leaping, as the Bible would say, counting the cost before making that decision. I remember talking to my uncle when I was very young, and he told me about, the time that he decided to really give himself fully over to God to be used by him for ministry. He was just telling me that he recognized the cost that it would be, and that it would mean his whole life, that it would change everything for him, and that's what his life would be all about. And he said that he wrestled with God all night over that, just praying, just agonizing over it, because he's like, am I really willing to do that? And that stuck with me, because I'm like, man, when I made that decision, it was kind of just like a flippant thing, like, oh yeah, sure, God, yeah, I want to be used by God, sure. But I didn't really think about it. I didn't think about what I was, committing myself to. But each of us who are Christians need to decide, like, am I willing to come on board with Christ all the way, truly be king of my life, and to live my life fighting for him? Because ultimately, that's where you find victory. I mentioned before, like, again, a lot of Christians fail to make that decision to make their life really count for him. And what happens is they lose. You lose everything. Ultimately, you come into heaven. You're not going to lose your salvation after receiving Christ, but you miss out on the ability to really love, to really have impact, and to bear serious fruit. So that's his challenge is, are you ready to consecrate yourselves? AKA, are you really willing to present yourself to God as an instrument of righteousness? So continuing on then in verse 6, it says, Joshua says to the priests, take up the ark of the covenant and pass on ahead of the people. So they took it up and went ahead of them. Take up the ark and pass it ahead of the people. What this is saying is that God's going to go before them, and God goes before you too. All right? That's what separates failure from success. Is God there? Is God going before you in this to make you successful, spiritually speaking? So the question becomes then, not can I handle this? Not can I be successful in ministry for God's kingdom? It's can God be successful? And the answer is of course. Of course he is. For the Israelites, it's like, what do we do about Jericho? God will handle it. What do we do about, the other armies that are waiting for us? God will handle it. For us, it's like, what are we going to do about COVID? God will handle it. What are we going to do about the pending Great Depression 2 that potentially is coming? God will handle it. You just notice that for Christians, we have a different perspective here, that as we're stepping out for Christ, that actually is the most safe position that you could possibly be in, because God is going before us. He takes care of you. 2 Thessalonians 3:3-5 says, but the Lord is faithful, and he will strengthen you and protect you from the evil one. We have confidence in the Lord that you are doing and will continue to do the things we command. May the Lord direct your hearts into God's love and Christ's perseverance. So what is the things that we command he's talking about? Well, Jesus gave all Christians a charge. He said to make disciples, to teach, to love, to serve as, and Paul tells us to serve as ambassadors for Christ. We're going out, we're loving people and bringing Christ to people who don't know him. That is our charge. And so as we're stepping out to do that work, that's the most safe place you can possibly be, even though it may look dangerous, even though it may look scary. This is what really Christians are called to do, where again, many are passive, but this is the spiritual battle that we're faced with. We're going out, we're taking Christ to people, and it's a war that's going on. And you can't afford to be passive in war, at least not a war of this scale. Okay, you take a look at like World War II, Belgium, try to be neutral. That was Belgium's idea. Well, they got crushed by the Nazis. Okay, there was no neutrality in World War II. Everyone, that's a world war, turns out. Everyone's in it. We're called to fight in love. Step into the war. You can be a casualty, or you can step out into victory by following. All right. Have some technical issues with the receiver, but I think we're on now. So, 7-Eleven. Okay. I'm going to read through 7-Eleven again. I think I must have accidentally turned off the mic with my butt. Yeah, we'll keep it out. We'll keep it out. Okay. And the Lord said to Joshua, "Today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of all Israel, so they may know that I am with you, as I was with Moses. Tell the priests who carry the ark of the covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan's waters, go and stand in the river." Joshua said to the Israelites, "Come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. This is how you will know that the living God is among you, and that he will certainly drive out before you the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites." Nailed it again. "See, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth will go into the Jordan ahead of you." All right, so he's going to be with Joshua just like he was with Moses. That was the secret behind Moses' power. It was God. "Now then, choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one from each tribe. And as soon as the priests who carry the ark of the Lord set foot in the Jordan, its waters flowing downstream will be cut off and stand up in a heap." So there's a key. It's when you step into the Jordan, then a miracle will happen. What's the miracle? The water will stop up in a heap, and they'll walk on dry earth. So when the people came to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the ark went ahead. Now the Jordan was at flood stage during harvest. Yet as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap a great distance away at a town called Adam. Adam's back there too. There's a whole town named after you, dude. It stopped. So, obviously this miracle is very reminiscent of another miracle that happened with Moses when he stepped over to cross the Red Sea. There's the great Red Sea parting, and he leads all the Israelites out during the Exodus. And so this is basically repeated again here, but at the Jordan River where it stopped and they cross over. And so it's a sign, as God was saying here, that just like I was with Moses, I'm with you too, Joshua. Now, this would be dangerous. It's not easy. It's like, look, this stuff, it's not going to happen. It must be out of batteries. Is that the issue?
No, it bends.
It's okay. Take that off. We're gonna use this mic.
Oh, the camera mic?
Yeah.
Can you speak up a little bit more?
Okay.
Check if it's good over here.
Are we good?
Hold. Yep. Okay, we're good.
All right. So, microphone back up. Running into a couple microphone snafus, but hopefully everyone can still hear me. If you're having a problem, comment in chat, obviously. Anyway, where were we? Yes. Stepping into the Jordan. The issue here is, before God would do anything and perform the miracle, they first had to get their feet wet. That's the key. He wasn't going to do anything until they first stepped out in faith and acted on their belief in him. They had to go out first. So, too, many Christians in their lives don't see victory because simply they don't want to get their feet wet. They're not actually willing to step out and start loving and serving. They say, I will stop here. I'm not willing to go that far for you, God. I'll only go this far. I don't want to get my feet wet. But as we see him call the Israelites, you got to get your feet wet. Same thing with us. God's saying, are you going to trust my word? Are you going to trust me? Well, that involves getting your feet wet a little bit. May we be a church that is willing to get their feet wet. May we be a church that's willing to be on the front lines of this spiritual battle, serving, loving people, having courage where people falter and are fearful. We need new leaders. We need brave and courageous leaders that are going to step up, just like Joshua, who are not afraid to follow God and to be radical for him. We need to step out, get our feet wet with new ministries. We've seen God do this with us recently. It feels like we've really started to turn a new page in the history of our church. I mean, not just a name change, but God's opened up all kinds of new ministry opportunities. We've got a new college group at Hiram College. We've got new high school groups. We've got college groups. Now, granted, a lot of these are on hold. This COVID crisis. Our immediate future with some of these is not immediately clear. But we trust God with that because we know God's been using these. He's been opening up these opportunities, and they're not to no avail. God's moving. God's working. So he's been opening up new ministry opportunities, and that's something to look out for. If we only had more people that had the eyes to see that were looking for opportunities, where is God leading? Where does God want me to serve and other people? We'd be able to see all kinds of new ministry opportunities. Pay attention to those. Are there ministry opportunities where you work? Where you go to school, right? There may be an opportunity right there before you that God's trying to open your eyes to. Can you see it? Are you willing to be courageous and get your feet wet there? We see with this COVID crisis, for some of us, we're like looking around like, how can we use this as an opportunity to glorify God and to serve and to get our feet wet? Well, we've been talking about a new opportunity that we're going to open up here as a church, tentatively called the Care Package Initiative. We're going to get people together and put together little care packages and deliver it to people in need. It's going to have food. It's going to have a Bible in there. We're going to deliver to people who need it. And this is going to take courage. People want to step out and make these deliveries and put these things together. But this is a great opportunity for us to love and serve. And so in the next few days, we're going to be throwing out, some information to you guys and how you can get involved in, getting these care packages out. But now's the time, ultimately, that we must live by faith. Ultimately, someday you're going to die, whether it's in the next few weeks by COVID or next few months, years, decades. Maybe Christ comes back soon. Who knows? Ultimately, our life here is going to end, and we're going to be in heaven. And we won't live by faith in the same way that we do now. There we'll be able to see. We're going to live by sight. We're going to have God with us every day of our lives there. It's going to be beautiful and wonderful. This time that we have here on earth is the only time we get to live by faith. It's a radical, awesome time, and a unique time in that sense. Let's make the time that we have here count. Let's make our lives count for Christ, the little bit of years that we have here. Let's live like there is no tomorrow. So I'll conclude here then with three types of people that are brought up in the course of this account. The first would be Joshua. Again, we talked about Joshua having to fill big shoes here. And Moses, is he going to be as successful as Moses? Well, of course, if he trusts God. Because the secret behind Moses' success is the same secret that now is in Joshua's possession. That is God himself. God must pave the way. But you got to trust. So like Joshua, a new leader stepping in new shoes, here at Freedom Fellowship, we're looking for new leaders too. Looking for who's going to be those next people to stand up and make their lives count for God and be raised up, lead home churches of their own, cell groups of their own. We need people willing to step up and willing to fill those shoes. Another group that we haven't read about yet would be the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. In Joshua 4, they're actually brought up. It says in verses 12 through 13, the men of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. Half-tribe, I suppose, because that would be Josh's son. Joseph's son. And, so their tribes, they crossed over and they were ready for battle in front of the Israelites, as Moses had directed them. About 40,000 armed for battle crossed over before the Lord to the plains of Jericho for war. So these guys, they had a special role. They were on the front lines of the battle. All right. In terms of church, these would be our missionaries. These would be people starting new, ministry efforts and bringing the people along with, getting help. Again, this is kind of, our leaders that we're calling for. The leaving behind of your tribe, of your comfort, to step out in the most radical way possible, to be radical for God. That's these guys. So we need plenty of people like that to step up. But the third group that, is obviously a part of this account are the families. They had to come too. It wasn't just the troops. The families had to go as well. They had to cross, and come into this dangerous territory. They were involved. And that's a very scary thing. We get protective of our people, of our families. I'm feeling this more now than I ever have on account of having a little daughter of myself now. We want to protect, we want to hunker down. We don't want to make decisions. We don't want to step out in such a radical way that it could compromise the safety and security of my family. These guys had to do that, though. God was calling on them to do that. That same call is made to us. That we don't put the comfort and security of our family first. We put God first. And sometimes that means leading your family into areas of discomfort and, seemingly it's not as safe a position. Ultimately, though, trusting God's leadership there, again, like I mentioned before, applies here. That's the most safe place that you can be, is under God's leadership. I thank God for my family, getting raised in the home that I did. My parents, my mom and dad, they made that same decision that we're going to step out, even though that may mean the comfort and security of our children. I was nice and comfortable back in Columbus. We had a nice, huge church back there. A little kid, I had friends. And then, my parents made the decision to pack up all of us and move up north to help out a fledgling young church up here called Neo-Xenos, our church, right? And we had to leave the comfort and security of home, and so I grew up there with, without the friends that I made and had in Columbus, and stepping in, at each age group, as I was entering junior high and high school, there wasn't ministries to step into. We had to, make new ones from scratch, with every age, and that's not a very safe position to be in. But ultimately, we saw God bless that decision. And we saw God take care of us, have his hand of protection on our ministry, and his hand of protection on the church as a whole. It was the best decision my family could have possibly made for me, was to deliver us out of our comfort into a scary situation for God's kingdom. I'm so grateful that they did that. I am going to have to make that same decision for my own daughter, Diane, and my wife, who are here somewhere. But, I'm going to have to put them at risk as I step into, in a greater leadership, as we open up new ministries. I don't know what form that's going to take in the future. Whether we move out somewhere else, starting new ministries, I don't know. But Caitlin and I decided that that's the kind of life that we wanted. We wanted our lives to count first and foremost for Christ, and that we'd be willing to move out and step out if called to do so. We're going to put God first in our family. The ultimate question then is simply this: who is it that you're going to serve? Are you going to serve yourself? Are you going to serve your career, your comfort, or are you going to serve God? So we conclude our passage here in verses 20 through 24 of chapter 4. It said, "And Joshua set up at Gilgal the 12 stones they had taken out of the Jordan. He said to the Israelites, 'In the future, when your descendants ask their parents, what do these stones mean? Tell them, Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. The Lord your God did to the Jordan what he had done to the Red Sea when he dried it up before us until we had crossed over. He did this so that all the peoples of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God.'" So God dried up the river here, and by stepping out in a scary situation, they've got to see God do the most marvelous miracle, that they would have witnessed. And so they set up there as a legacy. This is really a question of legacy at this point, that they're going to remember this forever. They're setting up these stones, one for each tribe, to remember what God did here. And so that becomes a real challenge for us, that, what is the legacy that you're leading? After, if you just live a life of comfort, dedicated to self, you're going to leave behind nothing of value or impact that carries over. But God's promise is, if we make our lives count for him, make him truly king of our lives, that we'll have a legacy. We'll get to see all kinds of fruit. We're going to be so blessed when we get to heaven, just being blown away by how God used us. It'll be amazing. And so now I want to share a video recorded by one of my friends. His name is Jack Seipel. Together we started the ministry at Hiram College. And so I wanted him to tell his account of stepping out for the Lord. So I'll turn it over to Jack at this point.
Hello, Freedom Fellowship. My name is Jack Seipel. I'm a student at Hiram College, and today Kyle has asked me to kind of share my story of coming to know the Lord, and also sharing about what it's like to, take a leap of faith and kind of show some courage when God gives us the opportunity. So I guess my story kind of starts in Cubed, the high school ministry in Hudson. And at the time, I was just kind of coming around, just kind of trying to have a good time with my friends and, enjoying the activities that we were doing. But it never really meant something to me. Like, the fellowship wasn't, deep for me. And I was a senior at the time, and I was focused on baseball in school, and, Christ kind of took a backseat, in my mind. And it wasn't until the fall semester when I was going to Nitro, my Identity project in Kent, when I really, it was really revealed to me that God had something different for me. Something different was planned in my life other than baseball, in college or school, or getting a job. And that was around a couple months ago, when Kyle came up to me at the end of home church, and in classic fashion, as he's walking out the door, says, "Hey, why don't we start a discussion group Bible study in Hiram?" And I can't even describe the feeling of, just joy and just shock when he brought it up. It was utter disbelief. I couldn't believe that me, this guy who had, just kind of started coming around, was given this opportunity. And that's kind of when the light bulb switched on. Christ has a plan for me. And, from there, Kyle and I started this group. It's called HIP, which is short for Hiram Identity Project, so not too fancy there, but we kind of started just doing this discussion group once a week, just like a normal home church. And a couple people were coming around, and at first it was tough. It was really tough to get this group started. I had no idea who I was going to ask to come. I had teammates, but I had no idea where to start. And it was then when I really decided to put my faith in the Lord, just praying and saying, God, you've helped me, just kind of realize what my life should be about, and I know you can help me here. And it was then when people started showing up, and we just built this group that was amazing, and it is amazing today, how much we've grown and how much fun it is. But it wasn't easy outside of that. Some of the struggles I had to deal with were a lot of verbal persecution from my teammates and kind of other kids on campus. Being like the only Christian guy on the baseball team was tough. I mean, I had a lot of hate coming my way of just people who weren't happy to see what was going on in the dorm room or in our study areas. They didn't want to see it on campus, and that was a really tough thing to deal with at first. But over time, I kind of put my faith in God, and just to keep me cool, and keep those tempers down, and just to stick with it. And it was tough to put myself out there, but it has been so rewarding to follow the Holy Spirit and let God just take control of where this group was going. It has been so rewarding. It's been so rewarding to watch a group like New Nitro to grow and be a part of it. I mean, I can't even put into words what just coming into a relationship with God has meant for me. And, it's not easy. The Bible, one of the verses that Kyle and I have talked about is, counting your costs of becoming a Christian. And it's true. It's true. God's going to put us through tests that we don't even know where we're going. But coming into a relationship with Christ has been the best decision I've ever made. And it hasn't always been easy, but I never would change any of it for the world. I wouldn't. And I'm so excited to see, where HIP goes after all this Corona stuff is done. And I'm so excited to see where Nitro goes too. So I just thank, God for the opportunity. And I thank Identity Project and Freedom Fellowship for just, shoveling me along the way, even when I wasn't feeling it. And just giving me this opportunity just to share the Lord. Because now, I went from someone who didn't really want to hear about Christ to I don't want to stop talking about Christ. And I just feel this fire inside that it means so much to me, and I want other people to know what Christ did for me. So, I guess, I urge you to, just take that leap of faith and show some courage when God gives you the opportunity, because I promise you won't regret it. So, thank you for your time.
All right. Well, I want to thank Jack for sharing his story there. It's been such a privilege, awesome working with him in HIP past several months. And like you mentioned, we've had our ups and downs as far as that ministry is concerned, and people flaking out, and then sometimes tremendous attendance. And so then this whole COVID thing hits, and it's kind of thrown that into chaos right now. And most of our people in that group are scattered throughout the area. Some are in California, Indiana, Pennsylvania. So it's tough keeping people connected. But we do have a chat where we're continually updating, talking. So be praying for HIP, that we could find opportunities still to keep some semblance of a community there. And that God will use that in the coming year to, and especially as a new school year happens, that we can actually still, meet in person again. And that God will continue to bless that and raise up Jack and pray for his protection, of course. But what a great example of what it's like to step out for the Lord, do something courageous, and make his life count. He could be really successful if he focused, simply on his athletics, on school and everything. But he decided he's going to put before that God. That's a wonderful thing. So anyway, I have Adam here. You guys feel free in the YouTube chat to enter your questions or comments. We'll get to a few of them. But before we do that, as you're coming up with your questions perhaps and getting ready to type them in, I'll go ahead and pray for us, and we'll get to that. Does that sound good to you?
Cool. Yeah, you guys can also Facebook message me directly if you don't have access to the YouTube chat.
If you're Facebook friends with Adam, send them.
If you're not my friend, you can send a request, and I'll probably delete it, but maybe not.
Yeah. Okay, well, Lord, we just want to thank you for being a sovereign Lord. We understand that, as we go through crisis, as we go through confusing, difficult times, that, ultimately you're going to accomplish your plan. And so we're confident in your ability to do that no matter what the circumstance is. And so we trust you,
And we just want to make our lives count for you, Lord. So I pray that you would open up new ministry opportunities through this, whether that's during the lockdown, or after. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens there, Lord. I know there's going to be a lot of hurting, needing people out there who need love and need you. So I just pray that you can help raise up people in Freedom Fellowship to do that work, willing to put you first before anything else, even family, because ultimately you're a family, and when we bring our family to you and put you first, that's the best position we could possibly be in. And so we just trust you with that, Lord, and I pray for anyone watching this live stream that has not entered into a relationship with you, has not invited you in. I pray that they would seriously consider that and just ask you to be their Lord and ask for the forgiveness of their sins. It's done as easy as that, Lord. That's the beauty of grace. There's nothing that you expect us to do to earn our salvation. You give it to us. And so I just pray that anyone who doesn't know you would take that leap, that first step of faith, and invite you in. And then I pray that for those of us who are Christians, that we'd be willing to take the next step, which is make our lives fully count, make you Lord of our lives, Lord. So just pray for a good rest of the evening. Amen. Also want to thank you for your patience, bearing with us. This is only our second stream, so I know we've had some technical snafus, but I think we've got them ironed out, and I think we'll be good moving forward. Thank you for bearing with us. Adam here is a deacon, a fellow college ministry leader, and affectionately a fake elder, but that's because he sits in our elders meetings in training.
Say fake things.
He says fake things a lot too.
Fake news.
So we're fake news. He's a fan of that, and we're trying to get him out of that. Anyway, do we have any questions or comments?
A lot of people said "Go Jack, go." Specifically, a few of those. So good job, Jack. Good testimony there. Playing spike ball once the weather breaks. Look forward to that. So we got one question from Mr. Doodles. I'm not exactly sure who that is. But he was, or she, I guess, mentioned the half-tribe of Manasseh and how you mentioned that. And so they were wondering, well, maybe you could explain it to us. Are they literally a half-tribe? Why are they called a half-tribe? Who are these people?
Half-tribe Manasseh, let's see. At the height of its territory, Manasseh occupied, spanned the Jordan River, forming two half-tribes there, one on each side. The eastern half-tribe was, by most accounts, almost entirely discontiguous. Do you know what discontiguous means? I have to admittedly look this up.
Define
So they were divided by location. So only half I don't know which half, the eastern or the western, but a half tribe crossed over to be at the front edge of the battle. So that's as far as my knowledge of the half tribe Manasseh goes. Do you have anything to add as far as that goes?
Yeah, I think the one half settles prematurely before they cross over, and I think maybe this teaching or one of the teachings, Joshua was like, you guys better fight with us because you settled early, but you promised that you would fight. And I think that was the end of chapter 1, that they're like, we're whatever you say, we're gung-ho.
Do you remember if it was the eastern or the western tribe?
That would have been the western tribe. Eastern tribe.
Ooh, this is why I have Adam.
What's
here.
the right
He's
side? That's
details.
east, right?
Yeah,
right side's east. I always forget that. Okay. Oh, let me. Joe Alley's asking about my jeans. I don't know what that word is you asked, but I think they're express, so they're express jeans. Jim Miller says, faith on earth is both a challenge and a privilege. Faith is given to us by God when we choose to trust and obey Him. It is not easy because who we serve is invisible, and to those who don't believe, non-existent. It is easy to lose light of His power and authority, and the world wants this and rewards disobedience. Have you ever felt this challenge, and how do you respond to it?
That the challenge of the world rewards disobedience?
Yeah, faith on earth being a challenge and a privilege. So we get to put our trust in Him, but it's not easy to do because the world looks at that as you're putting your trust in an invisible, non-existent bunch of pie in the sky type stuff.
Yeah. Well, Yeah, that's the thing, is that anyone who has truly stepped out to put their faith in Christ has recognized that it's not a pie in the sky thing. Because you only see the hand of the Lord moving out in miraculous, amazing ways to the extent that you're willing to trust Him with your life. People who aren't willing to give their lives over don't experience as much. And so, someone who has lived their life based on faith and has seen the Lord work, like there's going to be no amount of convincing to tell that person that was not worth it. They're going to come out the other end of that like, oh yeah, that was worth it. I experienced that. The unbelieving world doesn't understand that. They don't appreciate it. They've also never experienced it for themselves. There's no element of trust that's involved there. But often it'll the idea of laying aside self-interest interests like career, money, whatever it is, accomplishments there for the sake of Christ doesn't make sense to people who don't believe. But those who have truly experienced that and gone through that have said, that's worth it. I don't know of anyone that has given their life over to Christ and said that was the worst decision I ever made.
Cool. We got one here from Anthony Maglianico. He's
Anthony.
a fellow in my home church, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, Nova. If someone is struggling continuing trusting the Lord, mainly with moving forward, what are some ways or verses to help encourage people to continue to move forward?
Yeah. So, someone who is struggling with moving forward in the Lord, I think a good first step is kind of identifying like what are the barriers to that. Often that you'll find people are usually they're stuck. There's usually something that's kind of in the way, saying like often it'll be like an unconfessed sin or something that they got the secret life. It'll be some kind of fear, whatever it is. Like usually there's some kind of barrier that's stopping people. So I think it's really good to kind of be in the listener seat and try to just understand where they're coming from. Like, what is the struggle here? What is the problem that you really have? And after you really can understand, you're in a much better position to offer guidance, and show them where areas where they need to start putting their trust in the Lord. So, I think the listening part, the trusting is there, and then I think a good verse you have in Matthew 6, seek first the kingdom, and all these things will be added unto you. If you're willing to put Christ first. These are things that you're worried about your health, you're worried about money, you're worried about finance, you're worried about all this stuff. But God says, look, I'm going to take care of you and your needs. I know your needs better than you know your needs. And so if you're going to be willing to step out and trust me, I'll take care of what you need. But seek first my kingdom.
Cool. A few people are asking, how do we step out and serve and take risks during this COVID emergency?
Well, we already got a new initiative going on with this care package thing. I'd like to see some volunteers for that. I think that's a really great opportunity.
People know things. Tell us.
Yeah, another one is that we are, I've made the call a little bit earlier about like if someone knows of opportunities to serve, we want to know about those too. So we're getting our own initiative started, but I'd like to know if there are other initiatives that people in our church could join up with to assist people during this crisis. We're actively seeking those, in addition to making the opportunities. So if you know of opportunities, please let us know. Make a post about it, or let our leaders know, and we'll make sure that gets spread around and people take action. Otherwise, I think it's a really good idea to stay in touch with your people, stay relating. And that doesn't always have to be in person. You can be calling people, video calling people. But it's really important not to let your relationship slide during this time. So you need to be staying in touch and keeping tabs, keeping your friends close still, accountable. These relationships are really key. And so I know many of you who are watching now live in ministry houses. And so you're living with the people, you're self-isolating with them. So it's important to take advantage of that time. Not letting that go to waste and not just having it devolve into just veg out time in front of Netflix watching Tiger King, the whole time or something. It's like, take advantage of that time. So in Nitro, we made a challenge for our ministry houses there to be praying together every day. Have times of prayer, whether it's the morning, at night, every day you're praying together. You're together anyway, so take advantage. Keep each other reading, stuff like that. So I think that, we ought to still prioritize the relationships in the body.
Cool. Chris Gable wanted to say good work, Kevin.
Oh my God. When's he gonna learn my dang
I
name?
don't know, man.
Last time he talked, he called me Kevin, and he insulted my mom. So I see you, Chris. I'm coming for you, buddy.
Okay, we got Alex asking, saying that he loves his comfort, but he wants to leave a legacy behind. So basically, how do you start to see where God is pushing you so that you can get out of that comfort zone?
This is where you really cannot see unless you're tied into a community. You know, one of the things that is, so sad is how many Christians there are that would call themselves Christians, but they're not really tied into a body of Christ, a church somewhere. And so they live their lives, so many of them, according to their feelings, and that's what they base their life decisions on. Is how do I feel now? Like, what do I feel, guys? What do I feel? And God works primarily based on truth, right? Not just feelings. Feelings are a part. The feelings follow action, but it's when we trust our feelings that we get led astray, because the Bible tells us that our own hearts, our feelings, is not to be trusted. What we put our hope in is God's truth, God's word. So getting tied into community will change that, and that you have people keeping accountable and people helping you see things that you wouldn't. And then ultimately it would be things that are related to God's word. God's given us a commission, right? Go out, make disciples, teaching people, sharing Christ, encouraging, loving. There's always where there are opportunities to do these things that are like the commission of all Christians. Those are the opportunities God's opening up, right? You see it all around, and the Holy Spirit will work in concert with you. Where if you're in prayer, if you're reading, you'll see God's like, oh, there's the opportunity right there, and it's it's like loving and serving. It's like part of what God's commissioning us to do.
Cool. Rich Hager's asking a practical question of reaching the people in the community. How will we go about that or identify it? Will it be something like the Jehovah's Witnesses do with door to door?
Oh, that's a good question. This is such a unprecedented thing we're seeing now. We're kind of figuring this out as we go. Where everyone's in a stay-at-home order nationally. How do we take the gospel out to people in this circumstance? To be honest, we're figuring it out now. There's not really a hard book, or a hard, Freedom Fellowship strategy guide on doing this, but we do have the Bible. And so we're called to reach people with the gospel of Christ. How can we do that? Well, it's going to take getting creative with it. Going door to door, I think, would be pretty inadvisable. I think that would actually be an unloving thing to do right now, going door to door just to talk, because people would see that as you're not being considerate of, I got old people living here in my house. What are you doing here? Come on. So we want to be conscious of doing the loving thing. So it's not necessarily that. It's not like getting as many people together in one single room as possible. Otherwise, we'd be having CT. But how can we do it? Well, we're making our live streams available to anyone that wants the link. So I think there are people watching the stream right now that have not come to CT. I think that's a wonderful thing. We're glad to have you. So sharing that one way, but staying in contact, with people with the context that you have right now. People are just sitting in their homes. They're ready to talk. They'll text with you. They'll Snapchat with you. I would encourage engaging those relationships like you haven't ever before, right? Like opportunities there. I don't know. What other creative things can you think of there, Adam?
Some people on here, including Greg Sadler and some of the high schoolers, are talking about going through old contacts, old friends, and messaging them. I think it's a good opportunity to see, how are you doing in this time? Do you need any help? And also just be able to rekindle friendships. So I really like how those guys are doing that.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Let's see here. I think that might be about it, actually.
That it?
Yeah, we'll cut it off there.
Okay, we'll cut it off there. So we're going to go ahead and close this off. But wherever you're at, be praying together. And thank you all for joining and bearing with us. And we'll see you again next week.
Next week.